Hey everybody, welcome to podcast number 3 in a whole list of numerous podcasts we plan on doing at myfreedomjourney.com. My name is Jason Mahr, and this is
Gary Marco.
And the subject of this podcast, because we've shared my freedom journey, and we shared a little bit about setting up a no judgment zone in recovery. But we wanted to give Gary an opportunity to share a little bit about his journey as well. If you've been to our website,
don't fall asleep.
If you've been to our website at myfreedomjourney.com and seen my why story and Gary's why story, so you've heard a little bit about why we do what we do, but I want to let Gary have an opportunity to expand upon that. So in your why story, you talk about having an abusive family dynamic, an abusive relationship as a kid. Tell me about what you went through as a kid.
Well, it was really interesting. It was, from the youngest age I can remember, my parents just didn't get along, and they were.
Isn't that every?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And the way they did it was really interesting. They a lot of anger, a lot of yelling in the household, but they never went at each other. They would turn their anger towards the kids. And for some reason, and I've talked to my mom about it multiple times, but for some reason, I was always the target. It was like I had an older sister, but you don't hit girls, and my 2 younger brothers were protected by her to the nth degree, so I became the logical, person to go after. I was, a few years older than my next youngest brother, and let's just go after him. So I got so much physical abuse. Really, if there was a pattern to it, my parents would start yelling and screaming. It was normally about my mom's affair with my dad's best friend that he was trying to figure out if it was really happening, and it was, but somehow he was the only one that couldn't figure it out. So they'd have this argument. And she learned that, if I throw Gary under the bus just a little bit, he'll turn his anger towards Gary. And I could be walking down the hallway someplace, and all of a sudden, I'm being attacked, by my dad. One in particular really was pretty bad. There were definitely a few that I probably should have gone to the hospital, but we just didn't have money. So it was pretty much, if something happened, you had to just kind of suffer through it. And I was a young kid, and I walked in the wrong part of the neighborhood, and a whole bunch of bullies started chasing after me, and I got to the back door of our house, and lo and behold, it was locked. And these guys are coming after me, and I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get out of here? So I started banging on the back door, and no one was coming. So I turned to defend myself, and all of a sudden, I get yanked into the house. And as I got yanked in the house, I looked up, and a fist nailed me right in the face. And another one, and another one. I fell to the ground, and I got kicked several times, and I got knocked out. And I don't know how long it was after that, but I woke up about 15 feet away from the back door on the steps and was trying to figure out what happened. And as I opened my eyes, I'm thinking, how did one of the bullies get in my house? And as my eyes cleared up, I saw my dad standing there, fist balled up, blood everywhere. He had just completely destroyed me. And that was the sort of stuff that happened. Earlier that day, my mom and dad had a fight. So it was that sort of stuff that happened. It got to a point where I had to leave the house. I was concerned for my life. So I was really like a gypsy, through high school. I didn't go to school a lot in high school. I don't know how I graduated high school. My attendance record was the worst attendance record in the history of the school. Yeah. But it was because I was, sleeping at different people's houses, and I just didn't have the energy to go to school sometimes. There were a lot of times, because I knew my parents were going off to work, that I would take the school bus from a friend's house to school, and I'd walk home so I could get some rest. And then I'd leave before they'd show up and go back to my friend's house. Yeah, and
but you did eventually make it to college, right? You did eventually make it to college.
Yes, I did.
Remember you telling me about a mentor that you had in college that really impacted you?
Yeah, I got trouble in college too. I wasn't doing that well. It was my first, freedom from home. So I spent maybe a little bit too much time in the college bars when I was was younger and not on my studies. And the dean of the school came up to me and said, "Hey, look, you've got to get your academic act together or you're not going to be here anymore."
Yeah.
And she forced me to have a mentor. So it just so happened I had a history teacher it was the one class I did well in the last semester, and he became my mentor. And he changed my life around. It was just amazing the stuff that he taught me. We talk about in the last podcast, and we're going to talk about it in the future, paradigm shift. He was the definition of paradigm shift. And he really helped me see things in such a different way that they became less of a problem for me. It wasn't a complete healing, but certainly less of a problem for me. So yeah, he turned my life around.
That's great. And you've had a list of mentors in
Yes.
your life, obviously, and I've had a number of mentors in my life as well. But I remember in the course of our relationship, getting to know each other, you shared in being a mentor of mine, you shared about the fact that rejection was kind of a common theme. You struggled with it as well, just as much as I did, and that kind of helped the process move along.
Oh yeah,
forward. So tell me about your experience with rejection.
You can imagine growing up in an abusive household. The two big things I suffered from, maybe a third one, it was rejection, insecurity, and I really was kind of angry. So I kind of lived my life that way. Where I got my acceptance from was I tried to be the class clown in school, and I'm a huge introvert. So that actually caused more problems than good. But, I tried to be funny and make people laugh because I didn't think they liked me. So what better way to make them like me but to do that? Yeah. And I was a really good athlete. And for some reason, I got in my head that I had to be a good all-around athlete. So I really could do just about anything you could strap a pair of sneakers on and do it really well. But I never got great at any of them because I got more affirmations from being all around versus just good at one sport. Mm-hmm. So I never really got that good at any one particular sport. But those are my ways of...
Except for volleyball.
Oh, volleyball and golf. I guess, I did okay.
How high was your vertical?
43 inches. Wow. I could jump 43 inches.
That's incredible.
So, yeah.
Most of us have the 2-inch vertical. Right. He was a specimen.
I was also probably 50 pounds lighter than I am now, so a little less to get up in the air.
But tell me about, so you did experience rejection along the journey. Yeah. One of the pivotal moments for you was the rejection you experienced with your ex.
Oh, yeah. So, my ex had kind of a similar but different circumstance in her family. It was not physically abusive, but it certainly was emotionally abusive. And her parents didn't get along, and she had a lot of siblings, and there was a lot of conflict, and she was the youngest. So she got a boatload of rejection. So there were two people that suffered from rejection getting into a relationship, and neither one of us were good at affirming the other person, but that's what we were looking for. And, when you get two broken people in a relationship, right, it just didn't work. So, right. It crashed pretty bad, and of course, when it crashed, it left me feeling more rejected and more insecure. So it was very overwhelming.
Right.
To go
and of
that.
Course, just like in any relationship, you had your issues.
Oh, for sure.
That you brought to the table just as much as she did.
Yeah.
Because we never, obviously, when we talk about recovery, part of the first step in recovery is owning your own stuff. You'll hear that in AA. You'll hear that in any other program you go through, which is just taking responsibility for your own behavior. And when you take responsibility for your own behavior, you're finally able to move forward and stop pointing the fingers at other people. So, but there was a pivotal moment that really changed things for you. What was that pivotal moment?
Well, it was kind of a buildup of things. I went through this divorce. A few years before that, I had lost that mentor I had in college, and I had lost my dad to cancer, and I lost another mentor. So there was this series of things going on, and then 9/11 happened. And I'll just never forget how I found out that a friend of mine had passed away. I have a buddy that's a New York City cop. He was at ground zero, and apparently they had this big, huge place where they put everyone's picture on it. Mm-hmm. So if they found someone, they'd be able to identify the person. And he said he never looked at the pictures. He just never wanted to look at it. So every time he walked by that wall, he'd just keep walking. And he said one day he was walking and he was compelled to stop and look. And he turned around and looked at one picture, and the closer he got, the more he realized that one of my best friends in college was in the towers. And he gave me a call and said, Al's in the tower.
Wow.
And I was it just crushed me. I mean, it crushed me, especially since all that other stuff had happened. And Al was just this great guy that gave to the world. And he was, he helped the homeless and he, gave to charities. I mean, he just did everything. He was just a wonderful guy. He was a great teammate. He was a co-captain of the volleyball team in college. And when he passed away, I thought, the world needs more leaders like that. And I want to be able to teach people to be a leader like that, but I was in no condition to do it. I was so broken and messed up. I had a hard time getting out of bed. Mm-hmm. So I realized that I had to find a way to heal myself first before I could teach people that. But I didn't have a coach at the time or even a mentor at the time. I actually had to do it a little bit harder road. I went to leadership classes and did seminars and that sort of stuff. I got a little bit at a time, went to counselors, you know. Yeah. So it was feeding on a bunch of stuff versus from one person. But what a wonderful journey to go through.
Yeah. So you had that major trigger to kind of refocus you onto the pathway that you needed to be on.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of what led us to where we're at today.
Yeah. And as you said that, it reminded me of something because in both cases, we both got to a place where something was so painful that we chose to go in a different direction. Mm-hmm. And there's this thing, I think it was Henry Cloud that is the first person I heard it from, but change seldom occurs until the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of change. Because we all think that change is really hard, where actually it's really easy. Yeah. What's really hard is convincing ourselves that we can go through it.
Yeah.
And for you, it was what was going on with your job. Yeah. For me, it was all this, death and destruction going on in my life. Yeah. And it was like, this road sucks.
Right.
There's got to be a better road.
Yeah.
Right. But if all that stuff hadn't happened, I don't know if I would have taken the fork in the road, so to speak. Yeah.
And it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Staring at the face of change because you think that change is so many things that you need to do to get better. But it really is, it's a lot simpler than you think it is.
Yeah.
So we talk about change. Sometimes we say change isn't easy. Change isn't easy, but it isn't complicated.
Right.
It's simple.
Simple, but not easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So understanding that it takes a paradigm shift in the middle of that to really kickstart your journey, to get on that simple pathway. And that's something that we will discuss in a future podcast. So thank you so much, Gary, for sharing your story.
Yeah.
And we want you guys to visit us at myfreedomjourney.com. And please do us a favor, like our videos on YouTube, share the word about our podcast, and hopefully we'll see you someday in the future. God bless.